Hi, everybody. My name is Maddie, and this is my grape varietal presentation. I just got to share my screen really quick to get the presentation up, and then alrighty. So for my grape varietal, I chose Gewürztraminer. I believe is how it's pronounced. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So yeah, as we can see, the wine that I picked, I put a little pronunciation thing here because this one is kind of hard to pronounce. It's originally from Germany, but it is Gewürztraminer or Miner, I'm sure some people say. But so for the general overview, this is a white wine variety. When it's on the vine still, it has pink skins and it's very, very aromatic and spicy. It comes from Alsace, which is a warm, dry region on France's German border. So it kind of comes from all the general countries in that area, which we'll look at a map later to kind of give more detail to that. One thing that is kind of interesting about this variety is that it's susceptible to many vine diseases, which is the reason that it stays in such a compact region of growing. There are certain regions that it branches out to in terms of like more like New World areas that it grows in. There are like a couple areas in the United States, for example, but it mostly stays in this region due to it being so susceptible to these diseases. In general, it needs a relatively cool climate to bring out its super spicy aromas and keep that alcohol percentage down during fermentation. In terms of history, Traminer grapes have been present in Austria since at least 1000 AD, which is really old and really interesting to think about. And I just think it's important to kind of remember like how wine has been around for so long, which we also learned in class. The Gewurz prefix was added around the 19th century, which is likely when a mutation took place. So once we look into the pedigree of the grape, we'll kind of see that it comes originally from the Pinot family, but it mutated a lot to get to the wine that it is today. And then due to its name, it's really not that popular. Obviously, I struggled to pronounce it a little bit when starting the presentation. It's just kind of a weird name. I guess it's weird for marketing. It kind of puts people off and it just really hasn't been that popular. Because it's not very popular, it has a really low price tag. But that being said, this wine should not be overlooked. It's still very interesting. There's amazing food pairings that it can be put with. But unfortunately, it just doesn't have the best rep outside of its region. And then just one interesting fact that I found was that the oldest vineyard that this wine is produced in is over 400 years old, and it's in the Pfalz in Germany. So next we'll move on to the scientific information. So the Vitis vinifera is also Gewürztraminer, which this literally translates to a spiced traminer or traminer. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly between the two, or a perfumed traminer. As I mentioned before, it comes originally from the Pinot family. And if you look at this map over here, we can see that Pinot has super complex branches out of its family. So something interesting that I found is that it originally comes from Pinot. Sauvignon Blanc also comes from the Pinot family. It's an offspring from a grape in the Pinot family, and Sauvignon is the mother to Sauvignon Blanc, pretty obviously. But Pinot is known to mutate into many different types of grapes. So over time, that Sauvignon grape became the Gewürztraminer grape that we're talking about right now. And you can kind of see on this little map that I put, it's kind of complicated to look at, but I just thought just to give like kind of an idea of how related all the wines can be. So if we look at the similar grapes, there's Moscato, Riesling, and Torrente. So just something interesting to look at is here's the Riesling grape, but we can see through the branching that it has a direct connection to the Traminer. So that's how you can kind of see how they're all related there. In terms of geography, this grape is one of the 4 Grand Cru grapes of the Alsace, and that's the region that I was talking about earlier that it's kind of home to. Like I said, it's a pink grape that grows well in cooler climates. It originated in Germany. Obviously, that can kind of give you a hint from its name, but over several hundred of years, it made its way to the Alps. And now it's popularly grown in Italy, Hungary, Romania, Croatia, France, and Slovenia. There are still regions that it's grown in Germany, and it has branched out to some New World places, such as certain areas in the US, but this grape is very susceptible to diseases, and it just requires a very specific climate to be grown in. So that's why normally it's going to come from one of these regions on this map. Some popular blends. So as I said, like the best wines of this type probably come from that region that I just showed you on the previous slide, just due to the climate that it's grown in. It does the best there, and that's why we can see all of these most popular blends all come from that region. So this first one is the Wolfberger 2017 Hengst Grand Cru Gewürztraminer. It's $37. It has pear, mustard blossom, and stemmy aromas. And then it's very acidic. It has lychee, which is a very popular flavor, which we'll see in a little bit, that comes out of this wine. And it's also very spicy, which I mentioned before. Next, we have the Muret 2017 Croissant Laudelin Vendage Tarvis Grand Cru Gewürztraminer. Sorry if I messed up or butchered that pronunciation a little bit. This one runs at $49, so it's a little bit more expensive. It had a little bit of a higher rating than the previous one. And again, that lychee aroma comes out. There's also pear and dill in this one, and a little bit of honey and a licorice. One thing to note about this wine too is it's also pretty acidic, which is why it blends well with all those spicy flavors. Finally, the nicest one that I could find based on like wine rating websites was this Demond Bot Gil 2015 Vendage Tardives Sonneglans Grand Cru Gewürztraminer. This one runs at $50, so similar to the one before it. Some pretty interesting aromas and flavors that are coming out of this one too. And one thing that I did want to mention here is that on the site that I was looking at that had this wine on it, it was super interesting because the wine said that it could age until 2050. So you could let it age that long before opening it and drinking it. And I just thought that was interesting because typically with white wines, we don't see that aging process going for that long. It's usually only a couple of years, and then you usually need to drink it or it goes bad. So yeah, I just thought that was cool. So as far as the tasting notes, the wine is a very golden, coppery golden color almost. I provided a picture here for reference. So it almost looks like a similar color to a Chardonnay. I think it's just very like golden yellow. If you were to pick up a glass of this and smell it, you're going to get a lot of rose, honey, ginger, incense, allspice, and a little bit of smoke. This is a very spicy wine. And then in terms of the palate, you're going to see lychee, pineapple, grapefruit, peach, apricot, orange, and cantaloupe. And then there was an interesting thing that I found on Wine Folly here. The photo on the bottom of the screen kind of shows. So lychee is the primary flavor of this wine. That's the #1 smell and flavor that people usually get off of it when tasting a glass. But we'll see that if we move to a more ripe grape, it's going to give off more pineapple flavors, and a less ripe grape is going to give off more grapefruit. So a little more sour or sweet versus how ripe it is. And then I also just wanted to provide this. I thought it was super helpful when Professor Joel was showing us these during our presentations during class. So I just thought I would provide one on here too. So yeah, we see those lychee, rose, and grapefruit flavors. It's a very mid-bodied wine. It's not too heavy and it's not too light. Really low tannin. You can't really taste that at all. And then the alcohol percentage of this one can be pretty high because of its low acidity. In terms of food pairings, this one is really interesting, and I never had heard of this wine before, which is kind of partly why I picked it, because I thought that it was very unique and something that I'd never seen before. And the food pairings for this wine are amazing. Super spicy, interesting types of food. So in terms of meat, we're going to think duck, chicken, pork, bacon, shrimp, crab. This is a white wine, so we're probably going to stay away from the red and heavier meats there. In terms of spices and herbs, this pairs well with anything that's exotic because the wine itself is super spicy, low acidity. So those two pairings with spices like cayenne, cinnamon, turmeric, curry, cumin, anything like that is going to go great with this wine. Because the wine is so spicy, for cheese, we're going to want to pair it with something that's a little bit more delicate. So something like a Swiss or Gruyere. I thought Gruyere would be the best maybe for it, because I remember we learned in our pairing presentation that a lot of times, like regionally, wines can pair well with foods or cheeses that are from there. Gruyere is German, I'm almost positive. So it being a German wine, that would make sense. Vegetables, we're gonna look at stuff like coconut, eggplant, squash. Artichokes are really interesting because artichokes are a food that often don't pair well with a lot of wines, but this one works really well with it. And then in terms of some meals that we can think about, Thai yellow curry. So curry goes great with that spice, like we said. We could do a Moroccan tagine, which is over here. Again, a lot of spices, or that duck breast à l'orange. Duck is just a great pairing for this wine in general. Out of all the research I was doing, that was probably the #1 recommended meat to pair with this wine. And then I just want to give a special shout out to Rove Winery. So when I was kind of doing the initial research for my project, I saw that on the list we could choose to do a wine that's from Michigan or Illinois. And that kind of made me think of this place. So my aunt lives up in Traverse City, Michigan. It's way up north, pretty close to the UP. But as we learned in class, and I'm sure a lot of you know, Michigan has some of the best wineries in the country. There's really great terrain out there to grow grapes. And this is one that I frequented with my aunt when I visited her. This is something that she always likes to take us to do. It's super tiny, super homey, but it's a great place with great wine. And I saw on their website when I was kind of researching what I wanted to do for this, that they had a Gewürztraminer on their website. And I saw the aromas that were in it. And I was like, that's very interesting and nothing that I'd never heard of before. So that kind of led me to pick this wine. And that's the main reason that I chose this one for the project. So yeah, I'll go ahead and conclude on that. And I just want to thank you guys for listening. And yeah, thank you. Have a good day, y'all.